You did receive a letter from Julian, and you were one of the first people to actually, further disseminate the information that he had relayed to you. Can you talk into more about exactly what his message was, so our viewers can also be up to date and familiar on what he said in his letter? I'm sure most people are familiar, but if you could please touch on that in further depth.
Well, if you want, I've got it here somewhere, I think, so I can read it out. It's only a short letter. And what it said is it's, well, I'll read it out to you. You can the viewers can decide on the gravitas for themselves. So he said, "Thanks, Gordon. You're a good man. I have been isolated from all ability to prepare to defend myself. No laptop, no internet ever, no computer, no library so far. But even if I get access, it will be for just half an hour with everyone else, once a week, just 2 visits a month, and it takes weeks to get someone on the call list, and a catch-22 in getting their details to be security screened. Then all calls except lawyers are recorded, and all calls are max 10 minutes and in a limited 30-minute window, with all of the prisoners competing for the phone and credit, ? Just a few pounds a week, and no one can call in." And then he said, the other side, that's obviously his predicament, the other side, a superpower that has been preparing for 9 years with hundreds of people and untold millions spent on the case. I am defenseless and counting on you and others of good character to save my life. I am unbroken, albeit literally surrounded by murderers, but the days where I could read and speak and organise to defend myself, my ideals and my people are over until I am free. Everyone must take my place. The US government, or rather those regrettable elements in it that hate truth, liberty and justice, want to cheat their way into my extradition and death, rather than letting the public hear the truth, for which I have won the highest awards in journalism and have been nominated 7 times for the Nobel Peace Prize. Truth ultimately is all we have, and that's the situation that he's in at the moment. This is somebody who has been, let's face it, hunted like an animal by the deep state in America, hunted, and millions and millions of dollars spent on trying to get him into custody, which they've now finally got him into custody, and try and get him extradited to the United States. Why? Because he proved that war criminals were war criminals, and they don't like that. They want their secrets. So this is why we need to stand up for him. And it's why, I'm of the position, the opinion, with everything going on in the UK at the moment, all out there, protesting this so-called coup that they're saying. Where were these people? Where were they when Julian Assange was dragged out of his asylum, dragged out on home turf in an act of fascism? Where were they when he was dragged out by those policemen? Where were our media? Our media had all gone home. I was down there for 3 or 4 days just before he was dragged out of that embassy. They'd gone home. I remember walking past them. I could hear them complaining of being out there in the cold. Oh, it's not going to happen anyway. And as soon as they packed up, lo and behold, they went in and dragged him out of there in an act of fascism. The MPs weren't down there then. The talking heads in our media, they weren't down there then protesting it, saying this is our fourth estate. He hasn't proved it. He hasn't published anything that's lies. He's published the 100% truth. And he's in hiding the course of it because they want to get their hands on him. Now, the media, obviously you wouldn't expect them to be down there, and you expect them to be full of hypocrisy because, let's face it, they've cheered along his persecution now for 9 years. They have cheered along him. They have moved the conversation away from should we have full disclosure, should we have transparency, to what constitutes rape, and what Julian Assange. Obviously, it's just moving the conversation. That's all they do. They don't want to talk about the fact that he proved war criminals were war criminals. That's what he did, and that's why they're after him. And anything else, any other reason that they say they're after him, it's all smoke-filled coffeehouse crap. It really is. They're after him because he told the truth. He did the job of a journalist. He did the job of a journalist when, sadly, so many in this country who call themselves that are not even close to doing what he does. They're not rocking the boat. He does, and that's why they want their hands on him. And you can see there the predicament that he's in. He's on his own. He's isolated. He's got surrounded by criminals, by murderers. You've got terrorists in Belmarsh prison, for Christ's sake. Terrorists. And
yeah, Gordon, one of the points we always make is that Belmarsh is the UK's version of Guantanamo Bay. And we know because of WikiLeaks, like the treatment that prisoners receive in US military prisons. There's really no difference between a UK state prison and a US state prison and a US military prison in terms of how people are isolated, tortured, under threat of murder, rape, any manner of abuse every single day. I want to thank you very much for coming on the vigil, by the way, this morning. It really does mean a lot to us. And you couldn't be more right. There's a clear distinction between these stenographers to power, these people who have fancy journalism school degrees, and the people who have gone out and actually been in the trenches and done the work of finding out the truth about Julian Assange, the truth about how WikiLeaks came together, how they were framed from the set up from the beginning. And you'll find that even the people that are part of that stenography club, when it comes down to the specific espionage charges against Julian Assange, they're like, hey, whoa, wait, this is a little bit much. You know, he's a horrible person, and I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes assassinating his character, but these particular charges are spurious.
Well, they've shot themselves in the foot because they're cheering on their own demise. People like me have been saying over and over, do you not realize if you allow them to do this, if you allow the forces, as he says there, the forces within the US government to get their hands on him, you are setting a precedent that the First Amendment, or whichever amendment is in the United States, it basically just wipes it off the face of your Constitution. You know, you're setting a precedent there that means any journalist who publishes anything that the government don't like, don't you realize if you let them get their hands on him over this, then you're next. And they've said, don't worry, it'll be, they haven't done anything like that. It's the rape charge, it's the rape thing, and it's this, that, and the other. And what happens? We find out that it's a sealed indictment under a single charge of a password, of literally him. It sounds like him just giving a guess of a password, it being wrong, and then go, okay, then. And then that's what the indictment was. And we've said more will come, and next thing you know, there's another 17 charges, of which what you said there was one of them. Espionage was one of them. We said it was going to be that way. And all along, these talking heads in the media say, oh, well, Assange supporters say that there's a sealed indictment. It's,
you know, all these clear-eyed, well-scrubbed, quote-unquote journalists that never saw this coming. And yet here you are, here's George Galloway, who's been pushed way outside the narratives. There's people like us, you know, Jimmy Dore, Graham Elwood, who will be on the show later, people who are just regular human beings who have experienced, I don't know, I'm going to guess more hardship than most people. All of a sudden you have a news channel that is producing information at a more realistic and accurate rate than 90% of
I missed that last bit. It was breaking up a little bit there. I missed the last bit that you said there, mate.
Oh, you basically, all you have to do to have a more accurate show than 99% of media is to investigate one step further and be willing to disagree with the official narrative.
Yeah, you mentioned a few there, and I know one of them, Jimmy Dore, always says all you got to do is tell the truth about war, and you're instantly the best news reporter in America. So true. It's so true over here as well. You know, we've got a situation at the moment where Tony Blair was trending in the UK on Twitter, #1 today. It was one of the few situations where I actually, you know, where it usually goes the other way, but you know, he was trending because they were asking his opinion on what the government should do. It's like, this guy's a war criminal. He's got blood on his hands. He should be in The Hague. Instead, he's on the BBC and on the media saying, oh, and telling Jeremy Corbyn what to do. You know, they are out of their minds, the media are in this country. because there's the media asking Tony Blair, you know, what do you think? You go and ask a man on the street. I will happily get my phone and go and just find the random stranger for you and say, what do you think of Tony Blair? They'll say he's a war criminal. All of them do. Everybody, they hate him. Yet the media get him on. Oh, what do you think, Tony? Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Sir Tony. How's your institute going? They prop him up. They are so out of touch with the ordinary man. It's unreal. And it's people like me and you who, we talk their language. You know, when somebody says to us, you know what, that Syria thing that happened, you know, that bombing in Syria, in Douma, that sounds dodgy. I mean, why would Assad bomb his own people when he's winning the war? Why is that? That's what people like me say. Whereas in the media, oh yes, it's definitely Assad. Assad definitely did it. Why? Because our MI6 said it and the CIA said it, and they've never lied to us before. It's a theatre. It's a nonsense. And it's about time they really just disappear. And people like us, if they can't be the fourth estate, Steve, if they can't be the fourth estate, get out the goddamn way and we will. Let people who have got integrity, we'll get out there and we'll ask the questions, the real questions that need to be asked. Not whether Tony Blair thinks Jeremy Corbyn should have a bloody election or not.
Right. Or what New Hampshire George Bush learned before he went back on Ellen. You're so right. But that's the game. The game is distract. The game is make sure that we've got 800 different ways to tell the exact same story. You know, like an entire circle of talking points that all lead to one same narrative. And as soon as you step out of that circle and go, this is not right. This is, first of all, it's inaccurate. Second of all, it's facilitating a war crime. And, you know, thirdly, we're losing what's left of the veneer of free speech that we have in Western civilization or worldwide. Then they look at you and they say you're crazy, or you're, you know, treasonous, or you're a Russian puppet. And it's just, it's laughable, except for it's serious.
Yeah, you mentioned a word there that I like to mention on my channel or not, and it's something that one of my favourite writers and great Assange supporter Caitlin Johnston writes about a lot as well. It's a word that she used a lot: narrative. Control of the narrative is so important, because look at what they've done to the Julian Assange situation. If you ask somebody about Julian Assange, most people in the street won't know who he is. I've got to be honest with you. If you go out and you ask normal people in the street in the UK and the US, they won't know who he is. They say the same with Edward Snowden. Who's Edward Snowden? They'll say, oh, Edward Snowden, he's the WikiLeaks guy, aren't they? They don't know. The reason they don't know is because the media have control of the narrative. And as we know, the media, certainly in this country, and obviously I call her American as well, so I know that over there in America it's the same. Our media isn't there to inform the public anymore. We haven't got a fourth estate. Our media is there as PR for the establishment. They're the public relations for the elites in our country, in the United States. That's all they're there. And their narrative obviously controls what the nation talks about. They will have a big thing on the TV about nonsense. I'll go around my mum's and my mum will be asking me about it. It's the same all up and down the nation, especially with older people. Younger people, they're a little bit more clued up now with the internet, etc. But the older people who get out and vote, they can propagandize them all day long. And the BBC have been doing it for 100 years. They're so good. They really are.
There's a level of censorship there that we're trying to counteract by doing vigils like this. Because our goal is kind of twofold. It's to create or to show people who they can follow in the media, like people like you, people like the Jimmy Dores and the Graham Elwoods and stuff like that actually put out truthful, honest information. But the other part is to try to get people to act inside their local communities, to try to get them organizing to counter the narrative, because the only way to reach people is to actually go out in the world at this point, because our internet is so censored that even trying to just disseminate information about Julian just becomes speaking to the same 1,000 or so people on the internet, because that's how they've limited our box. And that's kind of the goal, is they want to just keep everything that's happening under wraps. They want to keep people divided and allow these voices in the media to be propped up while censoring the small guys. So that's why I think it's so important that there's this unified effort to cover the protest efforts for Julian on top of everything else that's going on right now. So I just think it's incredible that the way that they can control people so hard is they can even isolate a name like Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, where those people aren't even given that association automatically anymore.
Yeah, it gets to the stage where they don't know who he is. There's been so much written about him, and if you imagine, I mean, 90% of something like that of people don't read past the headline. And if you've got headline constantly with Julian Assange rape or Julian Assange rape, blah blah blah, even though we know, I've gone into it and I've deconstructed it, I've looked at it. It's not like I'm a fanboy of Julian and he can do no wrong. All I care about is the truth. That's really all I care about. And if I thought that he was not telling the truth and he was not all he seemed, then I would come down on him. I do with everybody else, even people that my supporters and subscribers to my show genuinely like, and they attack me for it, and that's okay, because I know I'm not being hypocritical. I know I'm being true to, I have morals and I have integrity. This is something that you need. But going back to your point over there about inspiring people to do things. I mean, I just got fed up with it one day. I think I got something like 8,000 or 9,000 subscribers. And I said to my subscribers, listen, they're not doing things right. They're not covering things right down there, especially with this Assange stuff. Buy me the equipment, I'll go down there. Lo and behold, my audience did it. They bought the equipment, I went down there and covered it. I missed him getting dragged out of the embassy by a couple of days, but still, we were down there and we've done some great coverage on it, thanks to the audience. And you know what? Anybody can do this. Writing to Assange, writing to their MP, trying to hold things like this, just to try and spread the word with people. And you're right, so right there about the way they're clamping down on us in social media. I've seen a massive drop off in my new subscribers and the amount of new eyes that are seeing my content. So it's extremely people that we share other people's work as well, and just try and create some sort of movement behind it, because if we don't, it's just going to get worse. And the censorship really is going to stop us altogether. And that's when we move into full-blown fascism.
So my goal for creating a movement to counter the censorship is to try to ally with other groups that are already acting, to are getting people in there talking about free speech in with like anti-ICE protesters in the United States or activist protesters. Like there's a big, just to give it a shout out, strike going to happen in DC. And I believe it's September 23rd. They're going to try to shut down the major intersections in Washington, D.C. as a form of...
That's Extinction Rebellion, yeah?
Yep. And I think that's straight.
One of the things, because I covered the Extinction Rebellion process over here in London when they shut down 4 places in London. One of the key points of the Extinction Rebellion, one of the key 4 main areas that they say is tell the truth. It's one of their main things that they say. Who better to explain the truth for us, especially the truth that the government don't want us to see, than an organisation like WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who will publish that material for us to disseminate without the propaganda that goes with it that you normally get from the media. So that's something that is really, if we can get Extinction Rebellion on board with the Julian Assange and get them to understand just how important it is that we all come out on his side, and how that can really help the move to fight climate change as well. So
if you could help connect me with somebody in Extinction Rebellion, I'd appreciate it. I've tried to reach out to him, like I've DM'd him a couple times and emailed him, but I haven't been able to make a solid connection with anybody yet. So if you could help out, cool. That would be absolutely awesome. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so Gordon, we do have some questions from our followers. So Miss Joss is her name, and her name is just Joss, but that's what she goes by on Twitter and on YouTube. She actually contacted me yesterday, and she was wondering about writing to Belmarsh Prison, not necessarily writing to Julian, but in addition to that, also writing about his poor conditions, kind of, making a complaint to prison authorities that he is living in poor conditions in the prison. And she was wondering that if doing this on a wide scale and having numerous people participate, if that would actually have a negative impact on Julian's situation. She was concerned that perhaps prison officials and authorities would then retaliate against Assange. So because you are in the UK and probably more familiar with the dynamic there, what are your thoughts on, what people should do with regard to trying to better his situation?
Okay, what I will say to, what was her name? Sorry, Miss?
It's Joss. Joss.
Okay,
she's from Colorado.
What I would say to you is, don't be paralyzed into not doing anything for the fear that it will do something. Okay, writing to Belmarsh would be huge. Obviously, writing to them, making if thousands and thousands of people were to do that, then that's going to be huge as well. From what I can tell, Julian is getting a lot of mail, so writing to Julian is going to be something that he enjoys very much. He hasn't got much time in there. He can't even, going to back to what Steve was saying earlier about Guantanamo Bay and Gitmo. In Guantanamo Bay, they can talk to other prisoners. At the moment, he can't. At the moment, he's isolated in the medical wing, and he's in his own. He can't even talk to other prisoners. So that's he's in a worse situation, if you like, than people at Gitmo. But you can understand if he's in that situation, then reading material and letters of support is something that's really going to help him. I mean, that's one thing you can do. Writing to Belmarsh, writing to the MPs as well, to demand to get them on the record as to what is their position on Julian Assange, and if it's on the wrong position, then to petition them and to get there to say to them, listen, we're not going to vote for you unless you come out. There are so many different ways that you can support him, and so many different ways to support him from the comfort of your own home. Even if we've got Christy Dotfield. I know that she's in the middle of the Midwest somewhere in America, stuck out there in the sticks, and she's obviously donated her time and what her skills are into helping Julian. And that's what I would say to people out there: just whatever you're good at. If you're good at art, do some art. If you're good at writing letters, do some letters. If you're doing campaigning and inspiring others, do that. But do something, and don't be paralyzed into and think, oh, I can't do that just in case it goes bad. Sometimes things happen with the best intentions, but you can't be paralyzed. We have to coalesce and support, this man. We have to coalesce and support the Fourth Estate and stop. I can't stress it enough. Without a working Fourth Estate, you don't have democracy. You don't have it. And if they can suspend the human rights of one person, guess what? Nobody in this country has human rights. None. It's that important, and we need to coalesce. Whatever you're good at, Miss Joss, do that. Whatever you're good at. If you're good at art, whatever. But do something. Everybody can do something. I had an interview with Emmy Butlin just last week. A great Assange activist, wonderful woman. You should go and check it out. It's on my channel. And she was saying to people how she's been correcting BBC lies. And whenever BBC, for instance, have mentioned that Assange rape charges in Sweden, of course, there's never been charges in Sweden, but that doesn't stop them printing every time. So she jumps on that and she gets them, and she goes on their website and she complains to the BBC and demands that they put a correction at the bottom of the articles that they've changed. And she wins like that. That's something that anybody can do. And it's a way to fight back, especially against the propaganda, and to tell this state, listen, we're watching you. And if you do something here, there will be hell to pay.